Hi guys, this is Dr. Aeronautics. Today's tutorial is going to be on cargo bay operations as well as skins. We'll talk about how the XR system's payload management works. We'll talk about how to grapple and deploy cargo both on the ground and in space. We'll also talk about some options for UCGO support because the XR-2, XR-5, and XR-1, well, the XR-1 can't take any cargo. The XR-2 and XR-5 do not natively support UCGO, but if you really want to, you can have it done. I recommend the Delta Glider 4 for UCGO, though, as well as how skins work. You may have noticed in some of the episodes the coloration of the XR-2 Ravenstar has changed from episode to episode, and I'm going to reveal how that is done. Okay, so we're going to talk about the XR flight payload management system. Let's try this in a phone guy voice. The XR-2 Ravenstar and XR-5 Vanguard feature cutting-edge payload support that makes it easy and fun to transport cargo from one place to another in the solar system. There you go. So the XR-5 is like the big honkin' freighter. It can actually carry up to 432 metric tons of payload, which is an insane amount. And we can carry up to 10.8 metric tons of cargo in this craft. It is possible to put more in, so that's not something that is going to prevent you from taking off, but it's a limitation that in the world of aviation should really be respected, because weight and balance in aviation and by extension space planes really needs to be looked at if you're going to fly a safe mission. So it is highly not recommended to carry more payload. Okay, we're now going to talk about how to actually get to the payload management area. So from the center console here, you're going to control up arrow, and that puts you to the upper panel. And then from here, there's two ways that you can access the payload camera view. I always forget to do this, but you can do control and left arrow, and that puts you right above the cargo bay. But you control right arrow, that gets me back. What I typically do is, if you notice underneath the APU button here, there's a payload camera view button. I click that, and that's how I typically get here. Okay, before we get straight into the grappling and deploying of payloads, we're going to talk a little bit about the cargo bay. So when it is closed, you're actually able to use the interface to determine what's in it. So if you'll notice over here, this select bay slot section labeled 1, 2, and 3. 1 is highlighted in gold, 2 and 3 are blank. And what that's telling you is that 1 is occupied and slots 2 and 3 are not. So I can actually select these individually to find some information about each of the slots. So just a note on the colors here. Basically, orange means that any selected slot is occupied. Cyan means that the selected slot is empty. Obviously, there's nothing in 2. Green means that it's unselected, but there is a payload module that is attached in the slot. And if it's gray, it basically means that it's unselected and unoccupied. So there's nothing in slot 2, and if I go back to slot 1, you'll see here's the XR-2 crew habitat module, and then that gives its mass and its dimensions. So just a note is that slots 2 and 3 are a different size than 1. In fact, the only payload that fits into slot 1 is the crew habitat module. So if you're not going to be flying with a crew habitat module, you really can't use slot 1. So we'll open up the cargo bay, and to do that, like almost everything, you need to turn the APU on. And the APU has its own dedicated button here on the payload camera. You'll just press the open button to open up the cargo bay. It's kind of hard to tell in 2D, so we'll head outside. But that's actually our slot number 1 right there. You can see a small adapter ring there. There's a crew habitat module. I have no idea what it contains. There's no way to get into it, so you just have no idea what's in there. If I had to take a guess, there's no bathrooms in here, so I would probably guess that there is a bathroom in here. Possibly a shower, although showers would only really do good in atmospheric flight. Once you go into space, you can't really use a shower unless you want to do so during a maneuver. That would be interesting. If suddenly you want to light the engines up for a Jupiter orbit insertion, and suddenly everyone's lined up to take a shower, that would be that's something that we're going to probably see a lot of memes about in maybe 100 years or so. And then back here in the empty space is roughly evenly divided into slots 2 and 3.
Information. APU running.
And shut the APU down, because otherwise she's going to drive us crazy. So, what I recommend doing is in the XR Flight Operations Manual, if you open that and go down to page 62, you will notice that they have a link to WOO, as in W0, not W0, WOO482's latest UCGO cargo deck. And it's also accessible via the Altea Aerospace website. If you go to user downloads, and then it is in the XR-2 Ravenstar actually it's just called other XR-2 add-ons. Towards the upper left you see the XR-2 UCGO cargo platform. They have one for the XR-2 and 2 for the XR-5. I'm not going to go over the XR-5s because they are not cross-compatible, and as such I've only downloaded the one for the XR-2 Ravenstar, and so it only fits in slot 2. I'm not exactly sure how that's coded up, but that's kind of beyond the scope of our tutorial here. So what that has done is that has loaded an empty UCGO payload module. Now, this isn't really much use in and of itself. So because of that, we're going to talk about how to load this thing up, and then we'll actually demonstrate grappling it. So I'm going to get this off the ship really quick. Okay, so one thing that I definitely do not want to forget about is that if you open up the scenario editor, so in Orbiter 2010, that's F4, you go to custom, and you have to have it enabled on the plugins module, and you go to scenario editor. You'll see 2 ships. You'll see XR, whatever it's called. Mine is called XR2-01, and then whatever that name is, you're going to see appended _bay to a second object. If I select it, you'll see it actually selects the bay. Do not delete this bay, because if you delete the bay, even though your XR2 is still around, you're going to get messed up. So definitely don't do that. So I'm actually going to swap over to the XR2 cargo platform now. So I press F3 to choose the select ship, and I'm going to go to the XR2_UCGO platform 1-02-01. I know you can't see it, but if you follow the instructions exactly like this, it should work. And press F1. Now this is actually the, it's not a spacecraft. This is the actual platform itself, even though it's kind of hard to tell. And it has its own menu here for grappling and releasing cargoes. If you press 8, it just gives you information about all the different cargoes that you have. So basically what you have to do is you have to get a cargo that's close enough to grapple. So let's just make it pretty simple, and we'll load a flag kit in here. That's something that you really can't do anywhere else. So again, this is beyond the scope of the tutorial. I'm just going to create a UCGO cargo flag kit. Okay, and I'm going to stick this right next to the platform with the copy state from. Okay, so skipping all through that, you now have a flag kit that's within grappling range of your cargo platform. So you're going to press F1 to get inside of it, and then if you press the C button, it'll grapple the cargo in range. So now we've got the flag kit. That's it. So that's all we wanted to load. You can load up to, I think it's 6 cargoes. Yeah, 6 cargoes inside of this thing. So suddenly you lose the other 2 slots, and though you may have been concerned about that and say, hey, well, that's not fair, you know, because it takes up the whole bay. Well, not technically, because you're actually getting 6 slots. So this is actually doubling your capacity to some degree. And you can actually consume the fuel. So you kind of really are doubling your capacity. All right, so we're back in the XR-2 Ravenstar now. Now we are. Thought we were not at the time. Okay, get back to the cargo bay now. So we've got that over there. But then you'll notice suddenly this Grapple Payload window has appeared. And this is where we get into the section on how to grapple cargo. So unless you change it in the configuration file, the default distance that you have to be if you're in space is 22 meters from the center of the vessel to the payload module if you're in orbit. Now, because we're on the ground, that's 400 meters. So this device that's sitting on the ground has to be closer than 400 meters to be considered in range. If it's in range, and if it's a valid payload, it'll show up in this Grapple Payload window here. Oh yeah, and one extra caveat is that the ship has to be within 0.5 meters per second, which basically means you can't be passing this thing at 6,000 miles per hour in low Earth orbit and expect to grab onto it when you're within 22 meters. Not happening. So as long as you have an empty slot, you can highlight the slot, and you'll notice over here it has the selected bay slot 2, okay? That's letting you know that it recognizes that you're going to load it in slot 2, and that's a valid slot to load. If I choose 3, it'll say no room because we need the whole bay. If we put in 3, half of it would be off the other end. And if we put it in slot 1, half of it would be cutting the cockpit here. So we select 2, hit grapple.
Payload latched in bay.
Now it'll tell you that you've got it, and it's gone. There it is, and we've got the flag kit. So we've actually just grappled a UCGO payload right here. And if we select it, you can see here all the information about it. 1,307 kilograms just to load a flag, but why not? So that's pretty much it for the ground. We will go ahead and talk about how to deploy, and then go up to space to demo that. It's pretty simple. You just select the base slot of what you want to get rid of, which is 2 here, and just hit deploy.
Payload deployed.
And that will deploy. And if you notice, it happened to deploy to a very interesting location, as in the same location it was earlier. That was how I got it out of the cargo bay the first time. Go ahead and deselect and everything begins over again. So real quick to review, if I open up the payload editor and want to load, let's say we're going to load locks in 3 and load main fill in 2. Now let's say we stop off somewhere, we're going to deploy these. So highlight 3, deploy.
Payload deployed.
Highlight 2, deploy.
No bay slot selected. Payload deployed.
And that's what it's going to do if you try to deploy and haven't actually selected something. So there they are. The ship basically puts them out right next to the port side here. And we want to get those back. So let's see, the locks is heavy, and we don't want a center of gravity that's too aft. So let's actually load the locks into slot 2. So if I want to do that, and I select slot 2, it's going to tell me that I've got the Aqua to fuel selected. But another thing here is that there are multiple ones in range. Now let's say that there were 300 cargoes, and you only wanted what was close enough. Well, you can actually hit this range thing, and it will control how far it looks out with the maximum of 22 meters. So if I set the range out to 100 meters, it's not really going to affect anything because you're still going to get it. So we'll select, there it is, the oxygen, and we've got slot 2 selected. It says 2 OK. Grapple.
Payload latched in bay.
Well, there you go. And now for the rest of this, we can hit grapple all.
Payload latched in bay.
And what this got is the single Aqua to fuel module. Remember that we cannot load the UCGO module because we need all the available space there in the cargo bay in order to grab that. So when you hit grapple all, it'll grapple what it can.
Bay slot is occupied.
Oops, I meant deploy.
Payload deployed. No bay slot selected. Payload deployed.
So if I hit grapple all...
Payload latched in bay.
Okay, that wasn't what I was expecting, but that's something to keep in mind too. Is if you load the UCGO platform, that's going to happen to you.
Bay slot is occupied. Payload deployed.
Deploy again. I need to get better at clicking things. Okay, we're opening our cargo bay doors here in space, just over the eastern seaboard. And we've got just about perfect timing to demonstrate this to its fullest here. So it works basically the same way, except we're going to reverse it here. We're going to start with the deploy and then move to grapple. So now you'll notice that the deploy payload window looks a little bit different here. And what you do is you can actually set a rate to deploy it at. You can only set positive rate because if you set negative rate, it'll bang into the ship. So I would advise setting to 0.2. That's a reasonable number. Now, you can really fling these things off at an excessively high speed. 100 meters per second, which is about 225 miles an hour. So,
information.
We've got 22
APU
meters
running,
which means I got a quarter second to load and deploy. So yeah, we're gonna say that to the end and show you what 100 meter per second deployment looks like. But for now, we'll use a more modest 0.2. So what you do is you highlight and deploy.
Payload deployed.
And now it has translated up at 0.2 meters per second. Let's do the same with 3.
Payload deployed.
Okay, so we've now deployed both payloads, and they're basically going to be rising at 0.2 meters per second. So in order to stop that and station keep with these things, we're going to add some translation.
Rotation, translation.
Okay, so we've pretty much nulled our rates now. So if these things were just sitting around in space...
APU running.
If these things were basically sitting around in space just waiting for someone to grab them, basically what you would do is, you know, realistically, you would translate up, you know, to get as close as you can. And then when you get very close, you would at that point want to grapple. So I'm going to add just a little bit of down translation here. And just a note that if these payloads don't do you justice, either these or the UCGO cargoes...
Information. APU running.
You can actually create your own payload module, and the XR Flight Operations Manual tells you how to do it. But that's something beyond what I'm willing to do a tutorial right now. Maybe if there were a lot of demand. And when I say a lot, I mean like probably at least 100 people telling me to do it, because that's something that's really involved. Okay, so we're going to we can either do what I said, grapple all, or we care about what we're going to grab, so the fuel we'll put into 3. So we'll highlight and grapple.
Payload latched in bay.
And there it is, back in the craft. And we're going to grab slot 2 now and select the
information.
Box tank.
APU fuel 90%.
So we'll hit grapple.
Locks information full. APU running.
And there we go. Everything's back in the craft now. So that's pretty much it for payload operations. The last thing I'm going to talk about is skins. But first we're going to fire off this thing at 100 meters per second, like I was promising. All right, T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, deploy.
Payload deployed.
Oh my god, look at that thing go! Oh gosh. I did say it was going to be 220 miles per hour, but man,
information. APU running.
That looks so much faster in space. Let's try that again. Try that again and get a little bit better vantage point. I did not realize, I thought I would have one frame to see it go out. I didn't even have a single frame, it just vanishes.
Payload deployed.
Look at that thing go. So yeah, highly unrealistic. Deploying something at 100 meters per second at this altitude would actually significantly change its orbit. Depending on the eccentricity, it might even be enough to cause a re-entry. So maybe that's why they allow that, but I don't know of anything that's non-pyrotechnic that could jettison at 100 meters per second. Like, that's insane. Alright, and we'll go ahead and talk about skins. Okay, so this is the skins folder. Basically what you do is you go to your orbiter root folder here, and then go down into textures, and then the name of the ship, which is XR-2 Ravenstar, and then you go into skins. And you can actually design skins, and you can download as many as you want. These are all the skins that come down default with the XR-2 Ravenstar. Most are pretty similar. You have these angel skins, which tend to have sloping stripes. The Falcon, which is its own prototype, which I think is covered in rivets. And then you have the Ravens, and the Ravens typically use lots of swept designs that use like shields and stuff. My favorite is Raven Red. That's basically a red and black combination that matches my computer really well. And then there's the special stealth one, which is basically all black. It's basically like, you know, any general stealth look on the road. And then there's also this Twilight Sparkle skin, which if you've been living under a rock, you can look that one up. Anyway, each one of these has two .dds textures. And again, I'm not going to go into how to make a .dds texture. I could spend 4 hours on a tutorial to repaint an XR-2 Ravenstar. So again, that's really something that I'm only going to do if there's extreme demand, because otherwise it's just going to take up time that I would spend making videos. So let's talk about how to actually get your skins loaded so that you know what you want and how to install it. Okay, so at this point you've chosen a scenario that you want to go with, and you want to change things to suit your needs. If we go to, actually let me get rid of some clutter here so that things are nice and simple. There we go. If you go to your orbiter location and then go to scenarios, that lists everything that you can open. And then what we're going to do is choose the one we want, which is this one, Vertical Launch 10 XR2. This is a scenario that I actually created myself. I think I created it, or at least I modified it to some degree. Anyway, this thing will be really cool if we can get it loaded up. Otherwise, I'll just have to do this in another take with something else. So what you need to do is you need to find the XR2 Ravenstar. So I'll just search Raven. And now you can see this is the block text that defines an XR2 in a scenario. And it's actually really cool because you can actually change things here to simulate anomalies. Like, for example, let's say we wanted to simulate a nose cone failure. Well, then I could just do 0 and, well, 1 is the open or closed state. The second here is the damaged state. So if I do nose cone 0, as soon as I load the scenario, it's basically going to tell me that my nose cone is broken. And that's really cool for injecting anomalies for training purposes, if there was such a thing. Orbiter is actually pretty robust in that sense, but I'm not going to do that for now. The next thing that you want to do is you want to search skin. If you search skin, that will let you know what skin is being loaded. Now, because you'll notice nothing has been reached, it can't find skin. Well, that hasn't been defined. So what's going to happen is Orbiter is actually going to load the default skin. And I forget exactly which one that is, but if you launch, if you delete that skin line from the scenario file and load it, you'll be able to find out. So I actually intentionally did this so that I can show you what it looks like to get one in here. So we'll have skin Raven red. So let's go ahead and try opening up the scenario first, as is. And then we will go ahead and reload it, or change the file and then reload it. Okay, looks like this worked, and given that the ship is in the configuration it is, yeah, I definitely edited this myself. This is a really cool launcher to kind of make the XR-2 Ravenstar a believable spaceship. Something that could be flown in probably our lifetimes, to be honest, because this is using shuttle technology and just combining it with a well, if you change the code here, almost SSTO, yeah, this could be something that you could see in 2050. Okay, anyway, my point is the skin that's loaded is, this is a Raven skin. I believe this is called Raven Silver. It might be Raven Gray, but anyway, this is the default skin. So let's see if we can actually fix that and make it something different. Okay, so I think you guys remember me talking about how I like the Raven Red skin. So let's go ahead and demonstrate that. If we go to Textures, XR-2 Ravenstar Skins, that's its name right there, Raven Red. So for example, if we wanted to do, let's say Angel Black. Let's say, actually, you know what? Forget Raven Red. Let's do Angel Black. We're gonna totally pull a Helltaker on this tutorial. So let's copy the skin right here, and it doesn't 100% matter where you put it in this scenario file, but I like to keep things as consistent as possible. So now I'm going to go into here, and it was right before the lights. Yeah, right about here. So then I'm going to go ahead and paste it in here. And we're going to pull Angel Black. And another good thing to do is to also back up the scenario file. Just because, like I said, I wasn't sure if that was going to work or not. So, you know what? I'm going to back it up. Just in case. So that looks good. Go ahead and save. And our time has updated. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I made this thing 7 years ago. It doesn't feel like it. Okay, and we'll load it up and see if we get Helltaker. Okay guys, that did the trick. Angel Black has loaded up. Now, interestingly enough, it actually looks more like an angel color palette than a demon. So you know what? Maybe Raven Red was the correct skin. We can demo that real quick. Okay, this is Raven Red. This is what I like flying with, and ironically enough, yeah, this definitely looks like the demon texture. Which is kind of funny because my computer is basically follows this sort of color pattern. That took literally 15 seconds to do. It's something that's really easy to do time-wise, and unfortunately, or rather fortunately, changing skins is pretty easy. Now, unfortunately, it just matters that you have to actually exit the exit orbiter and come back in. And you know something that's really cool that I just realized? The XR-2 Ravenstar holds 12 passengers and 2 crew, which means going back to the Helltaker harem. I don't even know if I'm pronouncing that right. Okay, yeah, it's harem. So basically there's 13 in the harem involving the Helltaker, so I don't know, I guess maybe there's one more slot for like the cop or something. But yeah, there's enough room to tote the entire demon harem around the galaxy. And with that crazy ending, finally leaving my more reserved self. That is the last XR2 tutorial that I had hoped to do, the last orbiter tutorial that I had to do when I set things out. I was initially thinking that I would just do all of the tutorials, and I ended up doing them twice and then 3 times, and then so be it, nothing got done. So, you know what? We are going to finally fly the XR-2 Ravenstar. When I set up my channel, my end intention was to fly the XR-2 around and basically demonstrate my different flying adventures to YouTube. And I'd never gotten to realize that because I got so hung up on the tutorials and finishing what I began. And now that that is finally finished, we're going to embark on the first grand exploration. And it might not necessarily involve an XR-2 Ravenstar, because part of the grand exploration is determining what ship to use. That's something that I haven't gone through in the tutorial, and that we'll actually talk about, except it won't be a tutorial because we're going to do it for real. So that's pretty much it. Basically, the way it's going to work is I'm going to sit down one day, and I'm going to look at where the planets are aligned and pick the planet that is most aligned to the most fuel-efficient path that we can do given a Hohmann transfer. And that is where things will go with this channel. I've been Dr. Aeronautics, and I will see you guys next time for our real flight and exploration of the solar system. Bye-bye.